Hey there, and good morning to you. Another great one here today. Don't forget, we're in the middle of an entire series. So this series started on Monday. This week's sessions end with today's lecture, but also they pick up right again next Monday, this coming Monday, the 25th, with an 11 a.m. interview intervention. And most of us need an intervention before our next interview. We need to be stopped from ourselves, because really interviewing is about being able to go in there either in person or virtually, and to teach them how to select you as the very best one. So coming up on Monday, a lot of great things coming up. We'll show those as well. But let's get started for today. Today is really my part 2 to my LinkedIn lecture. My LinkedIn lecture, which was yesterday. Here's the whole series, all the things here. By the way, you can see any of these, whether you're joining me on Facebook or LinkedIn or on YouTube. Easiest place to see all the replays is really over on my Self Recruiter YouTube channel. You can pull any of these up pretty quickly. So if you haven't seen the LinkedIn lecture, go see that one as well. Today is really about, once you have a really great LinkedIn profile, now what? What am I supposed to do with this thing? So this is, once you've built out the great LinkedIn profile, how do you use it as a selling brochure for yourself, to open up new opportunities, to make it easier to close business for yourself if you're not looking for a new job? So let's jump right in. It's career evolution with social media marketing, both for job search and for your career. When we think about social media marketing, there's a lot of different things. When we think about LinkedIn, subtitle for this lecture really could be, now that I have a great LinkedIn profile, now what? Everyone says, gotta be on LinkedIn. And then people will build out a great LinkedIn profile, leave it kind of like sitting up on the shelf over here, and go, well, there's nothing happening. There's nothing happening for me. Well, yes, your profile is sitting over here on the shelf. You have to activate it with some activity. And so what I'll teach you today is how to run a full social media marketing campaign for yourself, how to build it, how to manage it. It does take 2 hours of homework. So this is the lecture, by the way, is not the homework. That's the educational piece. But it's going to take 2 hours of homework. But once you do that 2 hours of homework, it takes you just 2 minutes per day. Every single person has 2 minutes out of their day, 2 minutes per day to run an effective social media campaign, whether it's for your job search, career, whatever it might be. And then you can use this campaign for 6 to 8 weeks, and then do a refresh of maybe another hour's worth of homework, and we can use that list again. So I'm going to detail all that out for you today, how to really make proper use of your LinkedIn profile. Or another way to say it, how I can take control of my career story. In case you haven't seen me before, John Crant, author, career coach, and speaker. Resume and LinkedIn guru as well. So if your career brand is really suffering from what most people suffer from, and that's bad storytelling. Most individuals, they're so emotionally close to their journey. Of course, it happened to you, but they can only see how to tell that story one way. And they can't see how to tell it in a still truthful but very new way that significantly elevates their career value. That's what I do for my clients. So if you need to work with someone to really help elevate your career brand, help open those doors that should be open to you but somehow are not, check out my Self Recruiter website. All my services are under the services tab. And if you need to talk before you know which one is the right package for you, send me a quick message and we'll set up a time to talk. I should also share with you a little bit about my background, because whoever's teaching you, you should understand where that knowledge is coming from so that you can properly parse it and decide what pieces do I agree with and align with my philosophy and I use, and what pieces really are not for me. And to make that decision, you have to know where the background comes from. 7 or 8 years in outside recruitment. That's a traditional headhunter on a desk, having to reach into the competitor company, lure out the superstar. As I often say, very, very similar to millionaire matchmaker type of function. It's really the same type of thing, different application of the same skill set. So also did local market Manhattan, where suddenly I had to meet everyone. Additionally, spent 3.5 years of that entire time being the national trainer. So we had a 100 office recruiting system. Every single person that would come in to be a recruiter, they'd come into my 90-day training program to teach them how hiring actually works. Not how people think it works, but how does it really work behind the scenes? When you understand that, everything changes. So I hope you check out all my lectures. There'll be a lot of eye-opening moments for you there. Ended up being VP over all those offices before moving out on my own and working with clients as I have for the last 10, 12 years, and also giving talks at the New York Public Library, at the New York State Department of Labor, Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program, Harvard Business School Club of New York City, and many, many others. One last thing you should understand, especially about my resume and LinkedIn services and my advice, is the fact that before all of that background, I also had a full pre-press background, which means I really do understand line and type and spacing and how all of that really communicates. A few resources that'll help you over on my LinkedIn. You can click on my articles and get to a number of articles that will really help you in some of your challenges in job search. Let's start off with this. I'm going to bring it center stage. It's about 2 minutes, and I'll be right back. I'm John Crant, author, career coach, and speaker. And today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about using LinkedIn and getting the best out of social media marketing. Your business is built on perception. Perception of the products or the services or of your reputation. Business today is judged by web presence, not just a business's website. In our traditional work life, we didn't hesitate to network with the right people when an opportunity arose. That chance to meet the right people that could help our career. But as a small business owner, sometimes it's all you. It becomes easy for us to prioritize networking away. Oh, not today. Until it's never on today's list. We have so many other hats to wear if we are to reach our dreams. And those other hats are certainly more important. It's important for every small business person to network, to open doors that you may not have even imagined yet. You need to be reaching and communicating with current and potentially new customers or clients. You need to be out there contributing to the discussion about you. And with focus, it takes much less time than you really think to be effective. But you do have to take control. You have to develop your LinkedIn profile into a 3-dimensional sales brochure, all about you, that naturally drives the reader to a singular conclusion. If I work with, hire, or buy from this person, it's the best business decision I'll make today. Then make use of social media marketing tools built into LinkedIn to be sowing your value across the network in updates and postings and other shares that influence the perception of you. Well, there's much more to share as we're just getting started. Now imagine that you have this great communication platform. By the way, that's your great LinkedIn profile that positions both you and your business professionally and effectively. And think about the effects of using and implementing a sharing on a schedule or editorial calendar to simplify your messaging. That's a powerful voice to be heard that affects perception. What would you want others to be thinking of when they're thinking of you? That's the important question. You know, it's a piece I put together a few years ago for Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program. By the way, don't get distracted by the your business. Obviously, I was talking to business folks, but you have something to manage that's exactly like that. You have your career brand you have to manage forevermore. So if you just substitute career brand in there every single time you hear business, this is your challenge. So It's not simply okay to, in today's world, to do a wonderful job all by yourself, isolated. Will anyone really even know? You have to get out there and learn how to take credit for it. That's what we're going to teach you today. Self-recruiter, this covers all of my lecture series. Today, of course, we'll turn this lens towards social media marketing. But really, a self-recruiter is the individual that's going to take control of this discussion about themselves, take control of the perception of their career brand. And we're going to do it through a number of steps, but primarily through our use of LinkedIn. So if you haven't watched my LinkedIn lecture, you certainly should. By the way, there's a very special version of my LinkedIn lecture right on my self-recruiter website, about halfway down the page, totally free. You can see me large, the slides large, and really use it as a great start and stop tutorial as you build an even better profile. Becoming a self-recruiter and taking control also means you cannot be afraid of keeping one eye on that toughest competitor imaginable. Those 4, 5, or 6 people that would like to take that job. You know, this person, they're applying for the job. Oh, they're going after it. That person. You can beat those people very, very easily, because those people that seem to be perfect, I don't know if you've met one of those. I mean, I think a lot of us think we're perfect, but nobody's perfect. We're by definition defective. We're human beings. We're all different. And, so I want you to think about the fact that those people suffer from something called ego and arrogance. And they wake up in the morning, they go, oh, well, who are they going to hire? They're going to hire me. And then they don't actually do their own homework. They don't get themselves really ready because they think they're just going to waltz in the door and take it, which they often will just from conversation. With a little strategy, a little planning, you can outmaneuver those seemingly perfect people very, very easily. Let's show you how to freshen up your career story. We're going to write a digital self-marketing campaign. First step in freshening up your career story is make sure to build out the proper LinkedIn profile. If you are a job seeker, you need to build out much more content, in my view. Everything I'm sharing with you is my opinion. Much more content on your LinkedIn side than is ever on the resume. If you're unsure about how those things work, check out my resume renovation lecture, where I really teach you how to create a single sheet resume, no matter how deep that background is, that is dazzling. Make them jump out of their chair. Get them in here. Get them on the phone. I have to speak with them. That's the right reaction to the right resume. But it doesn't contain all the story. Polar opposite to that is, how do you take that framework, the skeletal system, to your LinkedIn and now develop it into a full 3-dimensional sales brochure about yourself? That's the first part of freshening up our career story. The second part is what I'll teach you today, which is how to build a social media marketing plan to take your brochure and get it in front of people. Very, very important. Now, I know marketing ourselves is very distasteful. Modesty and humility. I joke about it quite a bit, but those are 2 wonderful traits for all parts of our lives, except for job search and except for career. These 2 places, it works directly against us. So we have to think about how, if need be, you're going to have to give yourself permission to put those things to the side so you can begin to take back control for yourself and to begin to think in a little bit of a different way. This is how we're going to create engagement, which is a lot closer to that style engagement. There's only 2 reasons you ever really get hired, assuming you're capable and qualified. And that's chemistry above all other things, number 1. So let's not short ourselves on building chemistry. And if you're not sure how to do it during the interview process, well, on Monday, 11 a.m. lecture, interview intervention, we'll teach you all about that. But it's also about number 2, which is a credibility or confidence in you. And the confidence in you, we're going to use social media platforms to push message about why they should be confident about you, almost as if they have the chance, well, they really do have the chance to look over your shoulder to see what you're reading, doing, sharing, attending. Now, maybe I'll put up a few of these LinkedIn and YouTube and maybe Instagram, Twitter, those kind of things that are here, and say maybe one of these or 2 of these or 3 of these you should be using for your job search and career. Facebook, probably not for most people. I probably have 2, 3, 4% of my clients that use Facebook for career. They don't get to do anything fun on Facebook. They get to be very methodical and thoughtful every time they post, because every single thing is through the lens of impressing a potential employer, either now or in the future. Which one should you use? Absolutely LinkedIn. I don't know how anyone gets hired in today's world without a LinkedIn profile, proper one. Not just a placeholder couple names, couple titles. There's nothing here. Okay. Proper built out LinkedIn profile that positions and sells you. The second recommendation usually causes a little upset, especially if you had food not too long ago, and that's Twitter. There it goes, right? Almost every time. Not talking about the 153 tweets over the weekend type thing. What I am talking about is seamlessly connecting your Twitter to your LinkedIn, never having to visit Twitter ever again if you don't want to. That's the way I use it. I mean, I visit Twitter 4 or 5 times a year. I'm not really on Twitter, but I send my content to Twitter, where it's very searchable, very discoverable. So everything I'm teaching you to share now on LinkedIn, if you connect your Twitter very easily with one toggle, even on the free version of LinkedIn, you can let it seamlessly flow out to Twitter where it can be searched. I can go to Twitter. You give me any position, any industry, any level, give me a few minutes to think about it, and I can come up with 4 or 5 or 6 words to search on Twitter to find the best of the best. Oh, not just capable and qualified. It's like cat hair in your mouth. Not the capable, the qualified. I want the best of the best of the best. How do you do it? Pretty easily. Think about if you were the best. A lot of us think, oh, we're the best, we're the best. Okay, well, if you're really the best, you certainly would have shared a best practices technical white paper. You can Google that, best practices technical white paper, which is somebody wrote a paper on how to best do your job. By the way, you do not have to write that paper. You could if you wanted to, but there's no reason for you to write it. There's a million of these papers out there. Good, bad, or ugly doesn't even matter. Just grab one of them, and it's your commentary that actually matters. If you agreed with it, what was there, I could say, what a great take on exactly what I do with a link to it. Best practices for exactly what I do with a link to it. On the fence, not sure I agree with best practices for exactly what I do with a link. Think it's all hogwash? Couldn't disagree more with best practices for exactly what I do with a link. So you realize it's not the content itself. If you're endlessly looking for the perfect content to be brilliant, well, you better write it yourself. It doesn't exist too many places, but that's a waste of time for most folks. If you're brilliant, it's not a waste of time for you. But if you're not that brilliant, it's much easier to grab anything and give commentary from the expertise and wisdom you built up. But all of these things represent platforms as well. I don't want you to get sucked down some vortex of social media. This is about doing 2 hours of homework so you can spend 2 minutes out of your entire day with a social media marketing campaign. You can probably choose 2, 3, maybe even a 4th platform where you might be able to do things, but don't get sucked into a vortex. Now, for perspective, and I did not invent this, grabbed it right off of Facebook not so long ago, a few years ago, I guess. In fact, you'll see how quickly things change as I run down it. This is just to put some perspective around social media because we think a lot of different things about social media. So Twitter, well, here I am eating a donut. That's what happens on Twitter. Facebook, well, I like donuts. Or it used to be how it used to be used. Foursquare, I don't know anybody using Foursquare any longer, even though that site and app still exists. Instagram, well, here's a vintage picture of my donut. This is all in terms of donuts, by the way. Instagram, well, that was the vintage piece, but who puts vintage photos up there? It's usually used for creative now, much differently. YouTube, well, here I am actually eating a donut. You can just see me. LinkedIn, of course, includes those skills. Pinterest, here's a donut recipe, but I don't know too many people using Pinterest for recipes these days. That's how quickly things evolve, and you have to move with it. At a bare minimum, you need to be on LinkedIn, and in my view, if you'd like to be employed, you also need to be on Twitter so people can find you more easily, even if you never visit it yourself. And certainly when I'm on Twitter, never going to post about lightning rod issues. We have a lot of lightning rod issues in our society. And I think you know how to keep that to yourself and keep that professional. Keep that in your live comments one-on-one when you're with people in real life, IRL. So information is the new currency. I talk a lot about this in my LinkedIn lecture. The more information you have access to, the more likely you are to be able to leverage it to your benefit. In terms of LinkedIn, normally what we're talking about is seeding information into LinkedIn, into our profile, everything else. But now we're going to talk about a different type of seeding, and that is out to the network, out to the groups we belong to, letting the AI determine our destiny and put our content in front of the right people. That's about influence. That, by the way, the AI that determines your destiny. It'll do it automatically if you begin to do the right things. Put the correct content in your profile, join the correct groups that make sense for your profile so the AI goes, oh, I get it. And then begin to share all the right content that makes sense for what's in the profile and what's in the groups. And the AI will be very excited to put your content in front of the right people. You have to have a little bit of trust. So why should I do all this? What is it about social media? Why does it still matter? Well, it's where the people are. It's where there's connections. There's a lot of maybe things we don't like that happen online these days. But in terms of career, we have to take part in that piece of it, or someone else will take our next opportunity. Best thing to remember is this campaign is proper use of social media, which will accomplish the second from the bottom. And that is a very simple way, with really seemingly no contact, how you stay on the top of people's minds very, very simply with very little effort, 2 minutes per day. Now, the social media profiles themselves, there's our shares, that's a different thing, but each platform has a profile. So whether you're going to consider using Facebook, which I don't recommend for most, or Twitter, which I recommend for everyone, and LinkedIn, of course, Instagram, if you're in creative in some way, I don't know how you're not using Instagram as part of your portfolio or presentation of who you are, whether it's just inspirational and or other. I use Instagram as well. And when you go to my Instagram, you're going to see all sorts of things that have nothing to do with what I do professionally. Well, how am I using that as part of my plan? Chemistry and confidence. People want to know who you are beyond the professional piece, a little peek behind the curtain as to who are you? What makes you tick? Why are you interesting? Oh, part of the reasons you get hired, by the way. So I use my Instagram for that. So I if you look there, you'll see me hiking up the Hudson Valley. You'll see me out in Yosemite climbing Half Dome. Amazing to get to the top, by the way. Absolutely recommend it, even though it can be terrifying. You'll see me almost dying in the California desert 2.5 years ago. I think that's posted there as well. Every 9/11 comes around, and unfortunately lost one of my sisters on 9/11. So those pictures ended up there, posted there as well. Really, everything you see on Instagram is related to challenge in some way, shape, or form, which is directly related back to what I do, besides answering the fact of who John is. So in terms of the profiles, you're going to want to think about how you're going to utilize this profile. So are your target markets using this platform? Is that why you chose it? What is the real reason you're on this platform? And what are your goals for your use on this platform? Because they're different on each platform. My goals for my Instagram are very different than my goals for my YouTube or my self-recruiter website or for LinkedIn itself. So that's part of it. You also have to factor in the fact that you're a product about to be marketed. Now, hopefully you've already built out the great sales brochure. If you need help, I think you know where to find me. You have to think about what you do better than others. And either what makes you the standout in your field or will make you the standout in your field. And you're going to have to start talking about that. Now, I hate to burst some bubbles here, but 8, 10, 12, 15 years in some role does not make you an expert. I know that's going to be hard for you to accept. That does not make you an expert. It actually probably makes you pretty much damaged goods at this point, unless you can tell your story to get out of that cycle. Because you're certainly an expert at doing something one way. And how many companies have any of us worked for that did it the right way? Therefore, you're really stuck in a rut in most people's minds where you have not had enough exposure to become an expert. You're just stuck doing it one way. And I think about a Zoom conference call I get to overhear quite frequently, and there's someone on that call from the same type of background. And even though they've now been in this new role for years or several years, they just can't stop quoting the fact of, well, when I was there, you mean the one job you had that had any meaning for a length of time where you did it one way, and that makes you an expert? How? All right. So we have to factor in that part, and we may have to do some damage control in our storytelling to overcome the perception that maybe we're not the expert we think. What am I getting to? You got to be the content guru of you. You're going to have to understand yourself better than others and what is marketable and transferable in a skill set that you can talk about. And this will allow you either to reframe or reclaim. I don't have to read everything that's on screen here, but reframe or reclaim what you need to, reset your trajectory, open up the doors that maybe seemed closed to you. Content itself, though, is king. So if your content is boring, if your content goes on and on and on in text, in a world where no one will read, distill it. You got to get down to something that showcases your brand. Now we're going to use LinkedIn, and here's an example of Twitter. You notice those two profiles are similar. Well, I use the same headshot, but the banners are different, yet they work together. Then I seamlessly allow this content that I share to flow across both platforms so it can be easily discovered no matter where it goes. Now, yes, as a public speaker and a career coach and career branding guru, this stuff features me because I put myself out there. Your posts don't necessarily feature you. They may on occasion feature you. Maybe you go to some conference and you take a photo just like out of the library, little selfie outside. I've had to take those ridiculous selfies in a suit with a roller bag as taxis are whizzing by, honking and going, look at that jerk taking selfies. You've got to get the content for yourself. It doesn't matter what other people think. So you may be in some of the photos, but usually most of your stuff is going to be about what you've either done or what you're involved in or something that makes you a standout or what you're reading, doing, sharing, attending type stuff. And I'm going to break that down for you as we build things forward. So what would you like to do? What you want to do? If you want to change trajectories, you have to skate toward that target and think about it. But all of it requires you to think through the lens of your audience, which means how do they see me? How will they see me? How do they need to see me? Well, they need to see you with all of these things. And most importantly, they better see you as part of the future of their company. Small little changes change perception on everything. And the mistake most people make, which I often talk about in the various lectures, is what you see on screen here of people deciding that, I'm just going to be cookie cutter perfect. I'm just going to be perfect. I'll take number 3. Number 3, I'm paying you less. You don't want less? Okay, I'll take number 2. I'll take number 5. Doesn't really matter. You're all interchangeable, cookie cutter perfect. I think we see the problem here. So both in building out your LinkedIn profile and what you share, yes, you're trying to reinforce that you are cookie cutter perfect, but also at the same time, somehow special, different, exceptional. That's how you get the right compensation package and a restructuring of the responsibilities if necessary. So let's go back and think about what qualities do you have? What makes you tick? What are you passionate about? What do you love to do? I hope that's something people will pay you to do as well. Then we're going to have to hit the chessboard and do a little bit of strategic sharing to reinforce, layer in that messaging in people's brains. Because I get a little bit of coffee. Sorry about that. So we're going to social media market our way to a new job or a new perception of our career. So we're going to use whatever platforms you zero in on. And part of it is to get the credit where the credit is due that maybe we weren't getting before. So you want to begin to think about, well, what have I worked on? Projects I've worked on, or projects I've initiated, or projects I've developed. Absolutely, we're splitting hairs to think about the various ways you can contribute here, or level of the accomplishments or results of the projects, or most people will share educational developments or books, articles, white papers. We'll go into all of that, because seeding all of this out there, every time you share something on LinkedIn and on Twitter, everything else, there goes your name with it. There goes a small version of your picture and your headline, especially with LinkedIn, your headline, which to me encapsulates or should encapsulate why you're so unique and valuable, travels with it every time, next to a few words of commentary. What a great take on. Couldn't disagree more. Can't wait to hear this person speak if I'm going to a conference. All sorts of things that I could share that would communicate, wow, John has his finger on the pulse. I certainly do. As you share something, I want you to think about, you're not really going to share it like I'm going to share this with my contacts. Well, not unless you'd like to not have any contacts. That's a life-changing event has happened to you. You got married, you got promoted to something really big, you moved to a new company. That's a once or twice a year type event you may send to your contacts. Other than that, you'll burn them out and they'll disconnect with you. Don't do it. Just trust the AI. You share with the network, and the AI that governs our destiny is going to look at your profile. It's going to look at your groups. It's going to look at what you're sharing. It only wants to make money, which is simply clicks. And so it's going to pick a small audience it thinks is right. it's going to dump your content in front of that audience. And if people react and look and comment or whatever, it's going to go, oh, this is good content. This is good content. I was right. They're going to pick up that content again, and they're going to expand it across your 3-level network, which could include connections, multiple levels of connections outward, and also all those folks that are in your groups. By the way, it's not going to land on all those pages, but it's going to land wherever your content is deemed worthy. Brand management. Well, we have to know ourselves. You have to be authentic and have some integrity and be genuine. This is usually where I interject the reality that I'm shy and introverted, which usually makes people spit out their coffee, especially my friends. They're like, what? Never seen it. It's like, well, just because I'm very good at hiding it doesn't mean it's not true. So yes, I've used a lot of technique over the years to be able to speak in front of audiences and to do my video series, everything else. But that doesn't make me inauthentic or without integrity or not being genuine, because this is me too. We're all multifaceted individuals. If you need to give yourself permission to step out of the small box you've constructed for yourself, well, I certainly give you that permission. We're going to have to break free. Perception is reality. So we can't just sit back and go, oh, I'll just be humble and do my work and they'll reward me. No, you know what they're going to do? They're going to water you and keep you just like a plant over in the corner. Don't touch it. It's growing. Leave it alone. Just keep watering it and feeding it. Don't disturb it. We've got to shake up perception by changing reality. We're going to have to share that we're this dynamic individual. So don't be afraid. Here's how we're going to create our plan. This is 2 hours of homework. It's not very difficult. I know you can do it. This is a social media share plan. So the basics are, we're going to build a list just on a text document, Word document, whatever you want. Text document basically of 25 to 30 items. That's the sweet spot in the number of items. And it's going to be primarily a mix of articles, books, events. And yes, maybe I could factor in some of those other things, the project I've worked on and all that kind of stuff. But most of it's going to be articles, books, and events, things going on with the players in your industry, the competitors within your industry, the challenges within your industry, or the new industry I want to go to, or the new function I want to go to. If anything's super special, oh, that's a very special article. Well, those things I could put on an editorial calendar. I'd like this to go out Tuesday the 25th, or whatever it may be. But most of the things are just going to be on this list, and you're going to wake up in the morning, because I've done my 2 hours of homework, and I'm going to go copy, paste, share with my first coffee. And if I'm having a mid-morning coffee, then I go, copy, paste, share. What is that, 15 seconds? And lunchtime, copy, paste, share. And afternoon coffee hound, copy, paste, share. End of day, copy, paste, share again. 4, 5, 6 times a day, like breathing, does not take any longer than 2 minutes because I did the homework in advance. I simply scroll. Now, this list, what are we building? We're basically going to find the article, book, or event. Articles, of course, you can go to Google, click the news tab, put in company names, put in challenges, put in your field, and you're going to get all sorts of articles that are all about that space. By the way, it doesn't matter when the article came out. You don't have to, it came out at 3 o'clock. I got to post it right now. Yes, that's fine. But I don't care if it came out last week. I don't care if it came out last month. If it's a great, relevant article, share it. Attach it to yourself and attach opinion. By the way, if you don't include your own opinion, it has almost no effect on you. You're a random sharer. But if you simply, this is an item I'd like to share, you grab the title, copy it, and I'll put it in my text document, put quotes around it so the brain can easily grab that title when they see it. Put the link right behind it, very, very easy, link right behind it. And in front of it, I simply put 4, 5, 6 words of my opinion, because when I share it, my picture's going to go with it, my name's going to go with it. And then it's like John says. So I put, what a great take on best practices for exactly what I do, if that's what the article's titled, and a link. So whatever it is, I'm going to 4, 5, 6 words of my opinion, good, bad, or ugly. Article, link, very, very simple. Now, we tend to think a little bit too much. So don't forget to, besides the articles, books, and events, and books, of course, you can go to Barnes & Noble, you can go to Amazon. Events, I think every event for your industry that's happening in the next 90 days already has a website, of course, or I don't know how they're going to have a successful event. I can share that at any time. Maybe if you want it to be perceived as best of the best, maybe your industry has a certain conference that if you're a mover and shaker, you're absolutely at that conference. Okay, let's look at a world where you're not going to the conference this year because of money and maybe COVID, who knows, whatever. But I don't think I'm going to be able to make that conference this year. But that conference is August. It's coming up next month for your industry. And it's like, that's the conference the movers and shakers are expected to be at. But why don't you post about the conference right now? So excited for the such and such conference in Vegas in August with a link. I am so excited. I didn't say I was going, but I'm absolutely excited. 2 weeks before the conference, I could pick out one of the speakers that's really interesting that's doing an online session. Almost every conference has an online session. And I could post again saying, oh, can't wait to hear so-and-so speak at the such and such conference in Vegas that I won't be at. Well, I'll leave that part out. And I can tune in the day of the conference also. And while I'm listening, I could take one of these type devices. I don't really care who makes it. And I could set up the conference that I'm listening to on my laptop. I can take a little sideways photo so it has a little bit of depth. While I'm listening, I can post it during the conference going, so interesting listening to so-and-so at the such and such conference in Vegas that I'm not at. You get the idea of how easily you can connect into the right conference if you had to be, because the right people would orbit the right things and filter in some of your own work, some of the things that you're working on or things that are exciting to you or would be transferable. Now, this share plan, beyond just putting in the basics of let me get some articles, books, and events, you have to think like a storyteller. Now, don't take that the wrong direction with the storytellers if it's not true. I mean, I could tell you the same story in a very dull, factual way, or I could tell you the story in the most interesting way. You know, when I got the call from the CEO, right in my shoes in the moment, it's all storytelling. So you have to think like a storyteller because it's a date and you have to draw people into the conversation, even though it's really a monologue when you're sharing. So it's your job to set the stage, set the atmosphere, set the lighting. Use flowery language when you need to, and do it all in a very succinct way. Absolutely. So it's very truthful. It's very non-confessional. And everything we do is to somehow showcase our assets indirectly. Not too much direct storytelling, but rose-colored glasses. So it doesn't have to be completely literal, but it does have to be truthful, but we can have a rosier telling of it. And really the tone is like you're speaking to a dear old friend that you haven't spoken to in a few years. All this is about nuance and communication and influence as you share. So nudge, nudge, nudge would be my recommendation here. Takes about 2 hours of homework to build it out. Let me share some of the ones that I've done here. And we're going to make this a little bit larger so you can see them. There we go. Let's just switch that back over. So up here in the corner left here was first year I was up on stage with Reverend Jesse Jackson at Rainbow Push Wall Street Project. So interesting because, of course, I was excited to know and going, wow, some doors are opening. But, you know, the good and bad in life all happens at the same time. That is the week that my father was passing away in hospice at 91 years old. And so I'm on the weekend flying back and forth to Florida to see my dad, who was still in amazing spirits right up to the end. And he's like, wow, this is amazing. You know, my father was a Catholic deacon, so he was quite interested that I'm suddenly up on stage with Reverend Jesse Jackson. And, you know, so that particular week, extremely stressful, obviously, since my father was passing away. And I'm glad that picture is a little small, so you can't necessarily see the level of stress. But that was about 2.5 hours of sleep. You know why? Because opportunity knocks whenever it does. I can't just go, oh, it's a bad week for me. This is the week. It happened. So you know, I'm at that conference, 2.5 hours sleep, but you know what? We have to turn it into lemonade. We have to make it something useful. Up on the top right, I got invited to Google Social Media Week keynote speech. Now I wasn't giving the speech, but I was invited over to that, so I posted about it. Down below, posting a couple different articles. Now they're not very uplifting, but they're exactly right for what I do as an example. Here's a few more shares to inspire you. Up at WHCR, Voice of Harlem Radio. And, you know, I've done that 4 or 5 times. Really, really interesting because it's 2 hours of drive time. And, you know, that means it's 6 to 8 in the morning. That means I'm up at 3:30 in the morning to try to get breakfast, get myself there, everything else, slide into that mic chair right at the 6 a.m. mark. And this host prepares nothing. It's 100% off the cuff, which, of course, I really like. Well, up on the top right, there I am up in Albany talking to lawmakers, volunteering my time on behalf of the library, trying to get library funding. By the way, John does not receive library funding, so that is pure pure help for the library and for other job seekers. Of course, down on bottom right, I was featured in AM New York, so that's always a little bit exciting. Although I haven't picked up those papers in a long time now. Broke the regularly scheduled lecture attendance record at the New York Public Library, and I'm, as I said, very competitive, so I posted about that. A few more other articles. You want to think about things that make you a standout. I suddenly got this call. I thought I was being punked, going, "Oh, you're in Essence magazine this month." I'm like, "Well, what? I should go look. What if I am?" And my gosh, I found myself in Essence magazine. Barack was on the cover, so it was a little hard to find. But there's my book right there. By the way, the shorter gal in that picture is the one that got me in there. She happened to be outside the New York Public Library after one of my lectures. I always stand out there and answer a lot of questions. And she said, "Oh, I'm blogging about my job search for Essence magazine." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, you should have my book." I trust the dots would connect, and it did. And there she was talking to some other career coach, and there's my book on the reading list. You need to learn to open doors. Or here's a screenshot. I haven't played this one in a while because of online visuals here versus in person. But here I am on Arise TV. Again, another spot that opened doors, and you just need to learn how to say yes and try to make that work for you. All of this sharing is really self-promotion. So we're going to have to get used to it. We're going to have to understand that's part of the influence cycle. A few more shares, and then I'm going to just pull it into framework about how you should structure yours one more time so we're clear. So here I'm doing a Morgan Stanley event. I share that picture. Doing something for Grace Institute, and of course I shared that. Doing my online boot camp. I think I mentioned my father was a Catholic deacon. I saw him in that pose many times. I'm sure he would have loved that photo. Up at WHCR, Voice of Harlem Radio, but of course I didn't make it into the shop, but my book and my coffee sure did as well. You want to think about all these shares also collect in an activity box right on your profile. This is another way your profile becomes really interactive, and they see you with your finger on the pulse of your specialty, whatever it might be. You can also put in long form posts. That's like a page and a half article. Please don't go longer than that. No one wants to read. But if you're going to do these long form articles, they need to be great. And these long form articles are another way to push message. Basic structure. Something like this: just finished a great project on projects that are sellable. Keep it short, sweet. Let them think about it being transferable. Select it to lead new initiatives in. Well, maybe it's digital content development, or maybe you're a member of a cost containment and reduction committee. Well, you won't be very popular, but it is maybe a very, very needed thing these days. I think I can come a little larger with this large type here. That's not going to affect anything. There we go. So maybe that's an advantage. Or maybe you're reading Social Media Marketing: An Hour a Day by Dave Evans. Good book. We'll talk about that. Or developing a new project on something that showcases your skills, your depth. Or maybe you're attending a lecture series on workforce development or social media marketing. You didn't have to say it was social media marketing for job search and career. You could just say attending a lecture on social media marketing, and you get that piece of credit for your field and your background. All of these things are the figurative little nudges, the small changes that change perception very, very quickly. Sharing accolades. Let's go back to that great book I mentioned. Sharing accolades can help you as well if you understand how to get some moonlight back to you. Congratulations, Dave. I see you're reading Social Media Marketing: An Hour a Day by Dave Evans. What a great book. Really got me up to speed. Think about that. Being seen as a leader, these things can become some of your shares as well, depending on what they are. Simply, why don't you let yourself not be limited by a ridiculous 8.5 by 11 sheet of job description? I look at the 8.5 by 11 sheet of job description as a starter idea. You hired me for my brain. I'm sorry, that's a starter idea of what I should do. I'm the expert. So why are you waiting for something to be assigned to you? Something needs to be solved, or something's unresolved, or something has to be developed. Step in. Here's a reminder. All of your communications, every single aspect of your communications now becomes part of your social media, including your signature blocks. So here's my ridiculously long signature block, by the way. It's very, very long. Grew up Catholic, so I know all about guilt. Oh my gosh, the first time I wrote this, I'm like, oh, what will my mother think? I'm like, wow, it looks like you made it. It's tough. It's tough. The modesty and humility comes in and goes, oh, you can't say all that. You earned it. It's true. You need to utilize it. You have to give yourself whatever permission. Now, maybe yours could be simpler. Maybe it doesn't need to be the laundry list like mine is. But at the simplest iteration, it should include something like this that then allows them easy access to your LinkedIn profile. That way, your LinkedIn profile travels with every single email that ever goes out again, personal or business, by the way. Show them your commitment, your energy, your passion, your drive. Show them that really you are the future of their company, because that's why they're going to hire you. You have the energy, the excitement, everything else. Brings us to the end of today's lecture on career evolution, social media marketing for your job search and career. Don't forget, Monday is going to be my interview intervention lecture. Here's actually the whole thing. And also there's a very special lecture next Thursday, which is my Ask Self-Recruiter live Q&A. If you're not getting your job search questions answered, send them in to ask@selfrecruiter. Just ask@selfrecruiter.com. And of course, all the best questions are always included in each session. Thank you guys for joining in today. Really appreciate it. If you need help on your career brand or any stage of your process, just check out my services packages over on selfrecruiter.com. And if you need to talk before you know which one is right for you, send me a quick message. We'll set up a time to speak. Thank you guys for joining in. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, message, all those fun things. I really do appreciate it. Thank you guys for joining in.